What's up, everybody? This is Chris, so I bring you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicles. This is the weekend review. On today's show, we're going to check out an awesome UFC Paris event that went down yesterday. We're also going to check out Hurricane Helene and its devastation as it goes across the northeast, southeast, past Florida, and how it's affecting some dealerships that way. And last but not least, we're going to check out Kamala Harris and her recent interview and a little bit that she said about the auto industry. All right, let's jump straight into it. And it was a lot of beautiful fights that happened, a little bit of twerking as well, but there were some awesome knockouts in the beginning. Lots of French fighters that we never heard of coming out doing some great things. I thought they were pretty awesome in the beginning. But it was this one gentleman, when the main event started, we got the opportunity to meet Bryan Battle. Bryan Battle, he is a gentleman from the U.S., but he had some really interesting tattoos and really interesting perspectives about his win over at the UFC. So here's Bryan Battle. He had a lot to say about his win in the UFC bout. Brian the Butcher Battle. He got a nice little TK over Kevin Joshua. And the UK people didn't enjoy that very too much because he was loud and proud about it. And I thought it, but of course I thought it was a great bout. Great fight by Bryan Battle, but you got to check out this awesome tattoo that he has on his back. He's got the Shenron, Dragon Ball Z Shenron tattoo. He's got all of the Dragon Balls. That has just got to be one of the most awesome tattoos I've ever seen in my life. Check that out. It's pretty tight. Okay. But of course, yes, he took that opportunity, dominated Kevin Joshua. Really great fight, really great battle, great win for Bryan Battle. Then we had William Gomez. He got into a fight with Joanderson Brito, and it was a pretty even fight. I kind of thought Brito won the fight, but they gave it to William Gomez at the end. But it was pretty even all the way. I thought Brito had him a couple times, had him some finishes, but he pulled it out. Split decision. Of course, you should never let a bout go to the judges because honestly, I thought Joe Anderson won, but there you go. And of course, the co-main event was Nasruddin Imhoff against Brenton Allen, and Nasruddin pulled it out in the end. It was pretty back and forth. He was pretty dominant, really. Brenton Allen, he did get some good shots in, but yeah, it was Nasruddin's night. He was just pretty dominating in the fight altogether. But last but not least, that final battle, it was wow. It was Renato Moicano against Benoit Saint Denis, and it wasn't much of a battle. Renato dominated him from the beginning. Had him on the ground the majority of the fight, and then round two they had to stop the fight because he had just a super nasty cut. Benoit did. He had a super nasty cut over his eye, and it was just it was the dominance. Renato dominated him from the beginning to the end. It was just complete dominance. So, but great fights all night. Of course, great UFC Paris event. Love to see when UFC travels over to places like that. Pretty much like the UFC Noche event. That was a pretty awesome event that they held over in Las Vegas for Mexican Independence Day. And I love that. That was a great event as well. So, of course, always great UFC Paris event. Great thing to watch. And we loved it all. And it was It was great. It was a wonderful thing. Okay, so moving on. Gonna check out Hurricane Helene and see what she's been doing lately. All right, so next up, let's talk about Hurricane Helene. It's been devastating the southeast for a little while now. You know, I've got friends over in Indiana have felt it. It's pretty covering a lot of the United States over that way. Lots of friends calling and telling me about power outages, even up in Indiana, as far as Indiana. But of course, destroying Florida and all those coastal regions. So let's check that out real quickly, and then we're going to talk about how it's been affecting some dealerships as well.
Scenes of devastation across the southeast. From Florida to the Carolinas, Helene decimating towns and communities. Its death toll still rising. In Asheville, North Carolina, an unfolding catastrophe. Homes and buildings swept away by raging floodwaters that have submerged the town.
It's beyond anything I've ever seen in my lifetime.
A similar scene in the town of Chimney Rock, virtually wiped off the map by floodwaters.
Chimney Rock's gone. Flying Bridge is gone.
Meanwhile, the heavy rains triggering a massive mudslide that washed out this stretch of I-40, a major highway connecting western and eastern parts of the state. Helene's flooding rains bringing devastation to Tennessee as well. And Irwin, the scene of this dramatic rescue. Further south in Florida, entire neighborhoods ripped to shreds. Homes decimated, boats thrown into parking lots.
We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate that we're alive.
Helene is the third hurricane to slam into Florida's Big Bend in just 13 months.
Entire houses are missing or flattened in on themselves. This recovery will be measured in years and years, not months.
A storm surge of record levels flooded the barrier islands just off of Florida's coast in the Gulf of Mexico.
I have a wife of 48 years that I've left on the island by herself, and she's pretty frustrated and stressed out.
Near St. Petersburg, crews are working through mounds of sand several feet tall, searching for what?
Wait, did he say he left his wife on the island? What's wrong with this dude? Is that what he said? He left his wife on the island, and she's very frustrated? Bro, you are headed to divorce. You're just leaving your wife on the island. What's wrong with you?
Whatever and whoever they can find.
We have active search and rescue out there going through every single structure, making sure if there's anybody in there that still could be rescued.
And Willie, this hotel here in downtown is one of the few places in all of Asheville that has Wi-Fi. And people here, as you can see, are gathering morning, noon, and night for a chance at some cell phone reception to get a message out to their loved ones that they have essentially been cut off from. No word yet on when services will be fully restored here. Folks here don't know how much more of this they can take. Willie?
My gosh, those scenes are just breathtaking. George Solis in Asheville, North Carolina for us this morning. George, thanks so much.
Our prayers go out to all those people out there that are suffering because of this hurricane. And it's been affecting the automotive industry as well. Gonna read a quick story about some things that's happening that way when it comes to some dealerships and Storm Helene. All right, of course, automotive news is from September 27 by CJ Moore. Tropical Storm Helene forces power outages at dealerships in Southeast. Ganley store could lose hundreds of Kias. Tropical Storm Helene left some auto dealerships in the U.S. Southeast in the dark September 27th after roaring ashore overnight in Florida's Big Bend region as a deadly Category 4 hurricane. Helene weakened to a tropical storm as it moved further inland. At least 33 people have been killed as high wind speeds and heavy rain that extended far out from the storm carved a wide path of power outages and flooding destruction in Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and other southeast states, Reuters said. Ted Smith, president of the Florida Automobile Dealers Association, told Automotive News there are serious flooding issues in Tampa Bay, including at Ken Ganley Kia, Newport Richey, just north of Tampa, and Clearwater, Florida. Ken Ganley, CEO of his namesake group based near Cleveland, woke up to a flood of missed calls and texts. It was about 6 a.m. and I looked at my phone and said, "Oh God, something's wrong," Ganley said. He said the Kia store in Newport Richey off Florida's battered U.S. Route 19 took on at least 4 feet of water, lost power, and could lose up to 700 vehicles. Damn. We did have cars that caught fire, Ganley said. We had multiple cars where the airbags blew. We had cars floating around the property. Ganley, whose company is the nation's 14th largest dealer group, said some of the first group people to reach out, besides those from his group, were key executives lending support, which he appreciated. The entire area where the dealership sits is without power, Ganley said. There are no estimates for when the power will be back on or when the dealership will reopen. I'm in Ohio, so you can just look at your computer screen, Ganley said. This is just one of those things that's hard to get your head around. The first steps from a business standpoint will involve an insurance adjuster, Ganley said, but his main concern was for staffers, including some who had flooded homes. We're going to make sure that all of our employees continue to be paid, and we're going to find our way through it, Ganley said. We're going to do the best we can. The Florida Dealer Association saw no severe damage in Tallahassee, Smith said, but will be checking on dealers in Perry and Lake City, Florida, as well as farther east. More than 4 million homes and businesses in the region were without power September 27, according to the tracking website Power Outage US. Devastating stuff. Prayers for all those people in the Southeast that are dealing with this. Prayers for all the people who are going to be losing their jobs because the buildings have been destroyed or the dealerships won't be able to function. It's just a horrible situation. Just another one of the horrible situations that have gone on in our world over the last couple of months. And this is going to be devastating. And like the gentleman said, it's going to be years of rebuild on this one. So, you know, we just pray for the best. When it comes to the dealerships, they, of course, have insurance. So insurance is going to cover the cost of most of these problems. I remember back when there was a big storm when I ran a dealership back in Indiana. We was having golf-sized hail that destroyed the majority of my inventory. So I ended up spending like $6,000 or $7,000 to a dent repair guy to get all the dents out of all my cars. But of course that was covered under insurance, so wasn't that big a deal. But it's more about those people who are not going to be able to work. So I'm very appreciative of this gentleman saying that at the very least at his dealership that he's going to be making sure everybody still continues to get paid, continues to, you know, be able to make a living, because the majority of people that work for him at that company probably had devastation to their homes, to their family members' homes, and probably devastation to their vehicles as well. So it's going to be a rough climb. Going to be a super, super duper rough climb for those folks over there. So we can only hope for the very, very best. All right, so we're going to bring in another quick story before we jump into Kamala Harris, because we're going to have time. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about BYD for a second and some things that are going on with them, if we can find it. But Trump had a lot to say about BYD in his last speech. He talked about, of course, how they have to plant things that's going on over in Mexico, which are very true. BYD is making moves into Mexico, and they're preparing for a big jump into the U.S. as much as they can. They know that it's going to be extremely important for them when it comes to who is in office when they make that decision, of course, because they understand that if Trump is in office, he's going to do a lot to make sure that if they try to bring their vehicles over to the U.S., that they're going to pay a high price, i.e. tariffs, stuff like that. And more importantly, Trump is going to insist, which is my idea, what I think is more important, is going to insist that these companies that want to bring their Chinese vehicles, their EV vehicles over into the U.S., is going to insist that they build plants over here that work on these vehicles or work on the parts for these vehicles, so that as long as we're allowing you to sell your vehicles here in America, that you are providing American jobs for American people as we, American people, spend our dollars with you. So If we are spending our American dollar with you, then you help or build plants over here so that we are benefiting. Our American people are benefiting from your company more than just benefiting from the purchase of your vehicles. That's what I think is important. I think it is extremely important that if you are going to be doing business over here in America, that we are allowed to make money off of you in the way of having factories here that our American people can work at to earn a living, and then be allowed to purchase your vehicles by earning a living from working at your factories. I think this is a great idea. I think Trump spoke of it in his last speech. I think it is a wonderful idea. I think it is a great plan to not only bring back factories and businesses and opportunities and jobs to the U.S., but it also allows us to be able to venture into the EV industry, as it were, with the Chinese EV vehicles. Some of them are very nice. Some of them be very beneficial to us. Some of us here in America would like to get into the EV market and drive some of these cars because we know they are great and they are very technologically sound and very ready for the road. So we're going to check out this story about BYD. Of course, we're going to go to automotive news as we always do and check this out. So, of course, automotive news. Chinese automaker BYD seeks further easing of Mexico EV tariffs. BYD launched sales in Mexico last year via imports, and the company has since announced plans to build a local plant to produce up to 500,000 cars a year. September 27, and this is from Reuters. Chinese automaker BYD is seeking an extension of tariff relief for electric vehicle imports from Mexico's government, an executive told newspaper Reforma in an interview published on Friday, as the company aims to build a plant in the country. A decree exempting some 15% to 20% of tariff payments on EVs imported from countries with which Mexico does not have a trade agreement is set to expire at the end of the month, as President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador leaves office. The proposal to the Mexican government is to see the possibility of through our investment in a new plant having the condition to extend the decree, country head Jorge Vallejo told Reforma. BYD launched sales in Mexico last year via imports, and the company has since announced plans to build a local plant to push out up to 500,000 cars a year for the domestic market, for our market. Those plans reportedly have been put on hold until after the U.S. elections. Yes, they have. Vallejo said BYD's proposal to the government also offered alternatives such as applying no tariff, a preferential tariff to the firm, or a quota-based tariff. The executive said BYD was still waiting for a response from the government. Lopez Obrador's successor, former Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum, will take office on October 1st, and Vallejo added that the company would wait for the new administration to take a position. In August, Vallejo told Reuters that BYD has narrowed down its list of 3 finalist states for the location of its future plant. All right, so we all know that they put a kibosh on this plant, and they're going to wait till the presidential election is finalized until they do. Why? Because they understand that if Kamala Harris becomes president, then it will probably behoove them to just make the plant over in Mexico and then slyly and smoothly start shipping their vehicles over to the U.S. from Mexico and do it that way. Now, if President Trump takes office, they understand that it's probably a better idea for them to stop that plant from being built over in Mexico and build it here. That way, if they have a plant over here, then they understand that, just like Trump said in his last speech, that they have a plant over here, he allowed them to sell their cars here. Because we have a plant here. They're helping the American economy. They're putting money into the American pocket. And they understand that if Kamala Harris takes office, they ain't really got to worry about that. Build a plant over Mexico, cheaper labor, more cars, better for them. We have to understand that this whole Chinese EV market is coming, and we have to do the correct things to make sure that if we do decide that we're going to allow them to bring these vehicles over, bring Chinese steel, bring Chinese innovation and software over here, we have to be making money off of it. We have to be selling chips that runs the software. We have to be creating the parts that build the vehicles. We have to have some way of making money off of these things to help the American economy. We cannot be in a situation where we're just giving them money and not receiving money back. It just does not benefit us whatsoever. All right, last but not least, we're going to, and we said after we did the whole thing about Trump, we said that we're going to definitely, if Ms. Harris speaks about anything about the automotive industry, we're going to review it and we're going to talk about it. Now, and this was a good interview. I really thought this was a well done interview. She does repeat her points a lot. And I don't really have a problem with that per se, but she does repeat her points a lot. And, you know, maybe some of the things she says aren't true, but, you know, she's a politician. And I've always said that, you know, most politicians lie. And I say that because when politicians are trying to campaign and trying to get your vote, they tell you a lot of things that honestly they can't honestly, you know, concretely say that can happen, you know, because they don't have that kind of power. They, you know, any idea or thing that they say that they want to do, like, you know, all of these things that she says she wants to do, the tax credits and all these things are going to have to come to a vote. So, you know, if they don't come true, then she's a liar. So, and that's all politicians. As politicians campaign, they say a whole bunch of shit, and then when they get into office, if that shit don't become true because somebody else wouldn't let it happen, it didn't come true, but they still lied about it because it didn't come true. So they all liars. That's my feeling on it. But let's check it out real quick. She didn't say much, so it's not going to take long. And fair review.
Over the last 4 years, there have been tremendous economic wins, and you've just laid out a big plan. But still, polling shows that most likely voters still think Donald Trump is better to handle the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, here's what I know in terms of the facts. Donald Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression when you look at, for example, the employment numbers.
It was during COVID, and employment was so high because we shut down the government, we shut down the country.
Nice. And that's why I like this interview. This young lady who was doing the interview, hey, she came with it. And that's what we need. We got to have Ms. Harris answer the tough questions so we'll know if she's going to be a good president or not.
Before the pandemic, he lost manufacturing jobs by most people's estimates, at least 200,000. He lost...
Cap, we ain't lose shit before the pandemic. We was booming. Before the pandemic, I was about to retire from the automotive industry. About to retire, period. I mean, I don't know what she's talking about. I'm gonna do some research, but as far as my extensive knowledge about the automotive industry goes, before the pandemic, the automotive industry was booming. Now, I will admit that a lot of mom and pop shops were going out of business. There was a lot of corporating when it went to the Midases and the Meinekes, and they were going out of businesses. But that was more about dealerships and their ability to make these newer model cars kind of harder to work on. So small mom and pop auto shops were going out of business a lot. I admit that, but the automotive industry as a whole was booming. Car sales were pretty much booming. Dealerships were making really good money, but of course that was kind of because cars weren't being researched and developed well, so they were going to the service departments a lot. But let's continue to see what she was talking about.
Manufacturing plants, ask the auto workers how he lost auto plants.
Yeah, we didn't lose auto workers and we didn't lose auto plants. At that time, we were booming on the auto sales. They were first starting to come out with EV vehicles, which built a lot of more plants because they had to build plants to create these EV parts that we had never seen before and had never had produced. And at that time, Tesla was booming. So Tesla was building factories. Tesla was, building Tesla cars at the time. So I don't know if that's true either.
We have grown over 20 new auto plants.
She said that she grew 20 new auto plants. We're going to look that up. Well, we got it. We'll do it later.
Has an agenda. Let's just deal with right now going forward, not to mention what happened in the past. He has an agenda that would include making it more difficult for workers to earn overtime, an agenda that would include...
I thought he just put together a thing that he was going to be, that tips and overtime wasn't going to be taxed. Wasn't that just a thing that he put out, and didn't she champion that and say she was going to do the same thing?
Cutting off access to small business loans for small businesses, an agenda that includes tariffs to the point that the average working person will spend 20% more on everyday necessities and an estimated $4,000 more a year on those everyday necessities, to the point that top economists in our country, from Nobel laureates to people at Moody's and Goldman Sachs, have compared my plan with his and said my plan would grow the economy, his would shrink the economy. Some of them have actually assessed that his plan would increase inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. So the facts remain that Donald Trump has a history of taking care of very rich people. And I'm not mad at anybody for being rich, but they should pay their fair share. But tax cuts for the billionaires and the top corporations in our country, and then not really paying much attention to middle-class families. My perspective on the economy is when you grow the middle class, America's economy is stronger. And there's empirical evidence to prove my point correct.
I kind of hate I kind of hate the attacking of campaigning. I always think it's more about just sticking to the points and more sticking to the politics. I don't know if anything she just said was true. It doesn't. I kind of know that most of it's not true. The stuff that I know about, I know is not true. I know that they didn't create no auto plants over the course of no time period. Recently, I know that for a fact. I can prove that. I know that the automotive industry was booming prior to COVID because I was part of it and I was making so much money that I was planning to retire. I'm waiting for more concrete information about how she feels about the automotive industry. I base a lot of how I feel about things when it comes to the automotive industry, because I think it's just a screenshot of the world pretty much. But she doesn't speak very much about that. She stays to her specific points, which I understand. You just want to stay with things that are positive. But the things that she talks about, the tax credit, and these are things that don't affect the people around me directly. All my kids, have homes, so that's not a problem, and they won't. It would, for me, the thing, her plan, it sounds like a good plan, but it doesn't. It sounds like it's going to have too many caveats. It sounds, for me, it sounds like her plans are going to be limited to a very, very minute amount of people, and I prefer a plan that's going to help everybody. When it tax credits. I want tax credits to help everybody. I don't want it just to be to new homeowners or first time parents and shit like that. If it's a tax credit, it should be for everybody. If it's a child credit, it should be everybody. The things that she's talking about will be very limited to a lot of people, and as far as I read it won't affect a lot of the people that I know directly, specifically because of my age. Maybe younger people, maybe maybe children, or teenagers. Maybe it's a perfect plan for them, but it's just not a perfect plan for the majority. But I'm not gonna sit here and beat up on Kamala Harris at all. It's still early in the race. Maybe something's gonna happen that's gonna change my mind. But at this point, I believe personally that Trump is speaking for me, because he says things that I think. Specifically, this last interview when he talked about the automotive industry, and he talked about the BYDs and the other Chinese companies bringing factories over here, because that's what's important to me, is we get back to a place where we have a lot of factory jobs and people are extremely employed, because all I've seen over last couple of months, specifically when it comes to this TV show or YouTube show, and the reviews that I've done, I've just seen a lot of people losing their jobs. I've seen a lot of factories closing, and I don't like it. And unless you can show me that, you can show me these 10 auto plants that you guys have built, because I looked it up and and the system doesn't show any. If you could show me this growth that you're talking about, and you can show me these jobs that you're talking about, then I'll believe more, and I will be more on your side. All right, my friends, that is it. It is a kind of beautiful Sunday, kind of cloudy out there, but we're going to head out here. We're going to try to enjoy this beautiful Sunday, and I hope you enjoy yours as well. I am your host, Chris Surratt. Please like, share, subscribe, hit us in the DMs, tell us what we need to do more, hit us with some comments, and let us know how we can make sure you enjoy the show. And I'm out. Peace.